Hi there, it's Kristen from Gorgeous Knits. In this video, I'm going to show you how to assemble your Gorgeous Knit pumpkin. So at this point, you should already have completed your work based on the Gorgeous Knits pattern. If you want to find the pattern, I have it available on my website. I will have the link below this video in the description. It's also available on my Etsy shop and my Ravelry. I'll have all those links. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I have here my completed work using the seated rib stitch. I do have a separate video on how to knit the seated rib. I will also include the link in the description below this video as well. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to leave your work on your needles. You're not actually going to bind off. What you're going to do instead is you're going to cut a very, very long tail, longer than you think is necessary. So for example, I've already cut my tail here, and what I've done is my tail is roughly about 6 or 7 times longer than my work. So for example, if I were to measure this and just eyeball it, I have, let's see, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, it's actually 4.5, almost 5, but if you were seeing, I'm actually measuring very wide here. So I'm actually going much wider than my work. So no, don't, you know, what I'm basically trying to tell you is don't worry so much about the length. Just make sure it's very, very long. Okay. All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your very long tail and take your tapestry needle and thread, and thread this quick here, because basically what you want to do, rather than binding off, is you're going to actually cinch the stitches as if you were to cinch like the top of a hat. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so right now I have the front of the work facing up towards me. Okay, so I've completed my rows 1 and 2 from the pattern, and my tail is on the right side of the work, the right hand side and the right side of the work facing up towards me. Okay, so with my tapestry needle, I'm going to flip this over so that the wrong side is now facing towards me. And what I want to do is I want to scooch all of my stitches to this other side of the needle. I'm using, as you can see, I'm using circular needles. You can also use double pointed needles. You could use straight needles too for the actual knitting part, and then when you get to this part, you can just transfer your work onto either double pointed needles or circulars, you know, your preference. But basically what I'm doing is I'm scooching these towards the end of the needle, and so now my long tail is now over here on the left hand side. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tail and I'm going to insert my tapestry needle into each one of these stitches as if I was purling, slipping as if to purl. So inserting from the back into the front, just like this, as if to purl. And I'm just going to slip the first stitch off my needle and onto my tapestry needle. Okay, and just give that a little tug. I'm going to do this the second. Okay, and I'm just going to keep doing the same thing, slipping each stitch off of the knitting needle and onto the tapestry needle. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with that all the way until the end. And so basically you want to take all of your stitches off the knitting needle and have it be on the tapestry needle and on the tail. Okay, so I have now slipped all of my stitches off of my knitting needles and onto my tapestry needle and my long tail. So the next thing I'm going to do is take that tapestry needle and just pull it and all the way through, and I'm going to actually cinch all of these stitches together. Like I said, like you're cinching the top of a hat. So see how these are all coming together as I'm pulling? Okay, so you want to pull tight. There. Just like that. Okay, so the next thing you want to do, don't cut your yarn. Leave your tapestry needle on your tail. And so what you want to do now is turn the work inside out. So remember, this is the front or the right side of the work. So this is basically the front of the pumpkin, the outside of the pumpkin. So what you want to do is flip this so that now you see the inside of the pumpkin, the wrong side of the work. Okay. And what you're going to do next is you're going to seam up these two ends together, these two edges together. Okay. So you're going to line these two up and you're going to seam them with the same long tail that you have, and you're just going to start at the bottom here and work your way up. If you want, you can put a removable stitch marker or as many as you need to keep the two edges from shifting. I'm just going to eyeball it and go. Okay, so a rule of thumb when you're seaming, you want to make sure, see how, I'll bring this closer, but see how the edges have these kind of these bumps from the seed part of the pattern, if you will. You want to make sure that those are lined up together. Okay, so what I'm just going to do here, okay, so my tail is down here, and I'm just going to go in to the middle of the V, this first V that I have here. I'm just going to go in between the two V's on that side and on this side. So see how I'm kind of making my own V in a way. And I'm just going to pull through. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing. Skip the bump. Make sure they're lined up, but you're not actually going to seam in through the bumps. You're going to seam in through the middle of the V's, if you can see that. So there's my next one on this side. I'm going to go in through here, and then the one that lines up is right there. Okay, so I'm just going to pull my yarn through and seam. Okay, and then go skip the bump and go into the next V on that side and make sure I'm lined up. Leave, yep, that'd be there. And I'm just going to do this back and forth all the way up until the corners at the top here match. Okay, so I have seamed my two edges together all the way up, and I am now at the very top where the two edges meet, the two corners of the edges meet. And so I'm just going to do one more seam just to kind of secure it a little bit better. You see how the edges are kind of still separated a little bit. So I'm just going to do one last seam through again through the V's. Right there. Okay. Okay. This was my cast on tail. So you actually don't need to weave this in. You don't need to cut this off. It's going to just get stuffed inside the pumpkin. I hate weaving in ends. So if anybody else is with me on that, you can totally just ignore this and stuff it and hide it and pretend it's not there. Okay, so now that we've seamed, just give it a tug. Make sure everything's pulled tight. There's no gaps between your seam. And so what you want to do is you're going to reverse this so that it's now, the right side is now back out to facing you. Okay. Okay. So, like I said, it's almost like I was saying before about cinching, it's almost like you made a very small hat. And I also want to point out, so this is the seam, the right side of the seam. By seaming through the V's instead of the bumps, it actually gives, almost like it continues the pattern in a way. This looks like I messed up when I was knitting. That's why it's popping out on me there, but it's okay. Once I start to actually make the pumpkin with the stuffing, it's going to be hidden. But it just gives a nice rounded, even look, you know, all the way around the pumpkin by seaming it through the V's the way I was just demonstrating. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is stuff your pumpkin. And just remember, again, don't cut your yarn and leave your tapestry needle on because you're still going to need both. All right, so stuffing. You can use any kind of stuffing you like, any kind of polyfill. I have, we can show you quick. Here's the bag. I just have a bag of Supreme Fiber Fill. It's 100% polyester and it's by Loops and Threads. It's just what I happen to find in Michael's. You can find polyfill or polyester, any kind of stuffing in any of your local craft stores, really, and on Amazon too, or on Target, and it doesn't matter what kind. Okay, and so depending on what size pumpkin you're making, because the pattern has either small, medium, or large sizes, that will determine how much stuffing you need for your pumpkin. So I have here a medium-sized pumpkin, so I believe I'm going to need roughly this amount of stuffing, but I really won't know until I'm actually stuffing the pumpkin, and then I can add or remove depending on how it starts to look. So I'm actually going to just grab and rip some of this, and I'm going to stuff it a little bit at a time. And you just stuff right into the middle there. Let's see, so that was a little bit. Get it in there good, pack down tight. And I definitely need some more, so I'm going to rip just a little bit more off. So I'm ripping, if you can see, almost like maybe a little bit more than a fistful's worth of stuffing, and then putting it in there and packing it down. Make sure you can see on the camera there. So at this point you can kind of get an idea of how much is in there, if you need any more, if you need to remove any. Just kind of massage it in there. If you want, you can kind of like bunch up your open section here and just kind of like take a look at how it would look when you're actually done with your pumpkin. Kind of like scrunch it down. I think I want to go with some more. So I'm going to actually take the rest of what I have here and I'm going to stuff it, and then I'm going to see if I want to take it out or not. So let me see. My stuffing in there, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just scrunch it all together and then kind of shove it down as if my pumpkin is already done, just to kind of get an idea of how it would look. Okay, I'm happy with that. For you, totally up to you. You can keep going. You could remove. You kind of use your own judgment All right. All right, so just kind of massage your pumpkin out a little bit. Make sure your stuffing's in and, you know, the way you want it to be. Okay, there. So now what you're going to do next is you're going to take your tapestry needle and your long tail again, and you're going to cinch closed this top part here. All right. You may want to use a removable stitch marker here as well, just because you're going to be cinching in the round, and that way you don't lose your spot from where you started. So I'm going to put my stitch marker right here on this stitch where my tail is starting, just so I know that that's where I started. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take my tapestry needle and I'm going to count out 3 stitches away from where I've placed my marker. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the top and I'm finding the V's. So that's 1 stitch, 2, and this is the 3rd. So I'm going to go into the 3rd underneath both of those loops there, you know, the 1 V together, from the outside into the middle, and I'm going to pull my yarn, get my marker out of the way. I'm just going to pull just loosely for now, and then you're going to do the next. So again, skip, go 1, 2, and into that 3rd V, that 3rd stitch, and pull, and we'll do it again. 1, 2, and 3. Oops. And I'm going from, again, the outside into the middle. So you're going to do that all the way around until you get to your stitch marker again. Okay, so I've gone all the way around and I've now reached back to the beginning again where I have my stitch marker. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to pull tight, pull it so that I'm cinching the top. Make sure your stuffing stays inside as you're pulling tight. Okay. Make sure it's tight, that it's kind of like that. Okay, so now I have, this is my one side, and coming back over, this is my other side. So at this point, both sides are the same, so you can kind of determine you know, your preference on what you want to be the top or the bottom. That's the nice thing about this stitch that I use too, and the way that the pumpkin looks overall, is that the top and the bottom, the whole thing all around, looks the same. All right, so let's see, I'm going to probably use this part here as my bottom, and I'll use this at the top here, well, as my top. All right, so what I want to do is, with the rest of the yarn that I have with my tapestry needle, is now I want to start to squish my pumpkin, if you will. So to give you an example, let's take this big orange guy here. If you can see, so now I was able to create more of like little ridges, the way pumpkins have those kind of indents all around. There's probably a better term for it, but like an indent, if you will, and almost like a line, and how pumpkins have that kind of those sections all the way around. Okay, so right now what we have with what we just made is kind of a ball. So to make it look more like a pumpkin, you're going to take your yarn with your tapestry needle, and you're going to wrap your yarn on the outside, and you want to line it up so that the yarn is going to end up being in between your rib, the rib stitch. So see how there's the rib and then the seed stitch, the rib stitch and the seed stitch. So you want the yarn to be kind of hidden in between the rib like this. Okay, so you're going to go from one side of your pumpkin to the other side, and you're going to insert your tapestry needle into the middle, and you want to push it through and so that it comes out your other end, because you're going to squish your pumpkin basically. So this part gets a little bit tricky because the more stuffing you put into the pumpkin, the more challenging it can be to get your tapestry needle through the middle here. You definitely want to have a good, strong, sturdy, long tapestry needle when you're doing this. So I am just kind of shoving my tapestry needle through the best I can, and I'm sticking my finger in through the other side here, and I'm kind of moving the stuffing around because I could feel the tapestry needle, and that way I can kind of like push it through the stuffing. That's the best way I can really describe it. You kind of once you're actually doing it, you can get a good feel of what I'm talking about. But you kind of just want to move your stuffing around and work it through from like both sides. All right. So I'm pulling it through. So now you see how my yarn is now coming out from one end in through the middle to the other. And I'm going to start to line it up in between that rib stitch that I was talking about as best as I can. And I'm going to pull through. I'm going to give it a tug. Okay. Not too super tight, but give it a tug so that you actually start to see that both sides start to cinch a little bit. All right, so then you're just going to go around again, and you're just going to do that, and you're going to go all the way around you're basically going to hide your yarn in each one of the ribbed stitches that you have here. So I'm going to do another one. And you want to kind of go in order. So I started here, so I'm going to go to the one next to it next, basically. But so again, I'm putting my tapestry needle on the opposite end of where the yarn is right now. So putting in through, and I'm going to stick my finger through the other side and kind of work the stuffing and kind of move it out of the way so that my tapestry needle can come through. Like I said, this can be a little bit challenging. It's definitely a little bit more challenging with the bigger sized pumpkins, the large size, because there's more stuffing. But it's definitely doable no matter what size you're making. Okay, so pulling my tapestry needle out with my yarn, and okay, so here's the that rib stitch that I used to hide my yarn. So now I'm going to use the one right next to it, right there, to hide. So I'm just going to line up my yarn, and I'm going to pull and give it a tug. Okay. So I'm going to do that again and again into each one of the rib stitches. And then it'll look more like a pumpkin, basically. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll come back to the end and I'll tell you the final step. Okay, so I have now made my pumpkin. I went all the way around, hiding the yarn through each one of the ribbed stitches. And so I want to just kind of fasten this so that it's not going to go anywhere. And then I want to tuck it in so that it's hidden. So I said I was going to use this side as my bottom, mainly because, so that's going to be my top. There's a pretty decent sized gap here at the moment. So, you know, we can see the stuffing. And so really what you can do is just tie a knot a couple of times with whatever yarn you have left over and tuck it in there and call it, you know, call it the end of the day. That's it. I kind of like to go one step further to make sure it's all fastened properly. So I'm going to take whatever I have left of my yarn here, and as you can see, it's gotten much shorter, so I don't have a whole lot to play with, but I'm just going to go through a couple stitches here, and I'm going to actually cinch this hole a little bit further just by pulling on these stitches a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of go just kind of randomly through a few of them around and just kind of pull without losing what I have left. Just kind of go in there. And let's see if that does it. Yeah, that's good enough. Because again, I'm using that as the bottom. If this were to be the top, it still would be fine because I'm going to put a cinnamon stick as my stem. You could also use a wine cork or like a wooden stick, like a crafting stick from a craft store or, you know, from your backyard even. So that gap here would be hidden by the stick. All right, so I'm going to just kind of double knot this and then stick it into the middle here so that it's hidden, and then that'll be it for the yarn part. So I'm just gonna literally just knot it once and then again so it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, I double knotted. I'm just gonna tuck this away, and that's that. Yeah, see, there's still a little bit of a gap, but that's okay. All right, so I'm gonna flip my pumpkin over and massage it out, make sure it's all nice and nice. And that's the bottom of it. Yeah, I'll still use that as the bottom, and this will be the top. So what I would do next is take a cinnamon stick and take a hot glue gun and put glue all in the middle here, and then stick my cinnamon stick and hold it there for a good minute. And I would say the same amount of time would be needed for a wine cork or a wooden stick or anything else you feel like you want to use as the stem of your pumpkin. So I have like a couple of examples here. So I have a cinnamon stick. This is a longer stemmed one, and this is a mini pumpkin. And then this guy that I was showing you before has a fatter but shorter stick. And this is the large size pumpkin. And I do have one other, I think this is also a small size, and again, it's a shorter cinnamon stick. Cinnamon sticks I just bought in my local grocery store. And what I've been doing is I've been cutting them in half, and that they've been making a great length for every size of my pumpkins that I'm using. But it's your choice if you want to make them long, short, or don't have any stick at all and just have, you know, a regular pumpkin. And honestly, they work great, you know, stacking one on top of the other too. So that's up to you, your preference, like I said. And that's basically it. That's how you make your Gorgeous Knits pumpkin. from assembly, start to finish. As I mentioned earlier, I will include the link to the pattern, where to find it on my site, as well as on Etsy and Ravelry. And I will also include the link to the video for how to knit the seated rib stitch. Okay, and I think that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. And I hope you love making your pumpkins. All right. Don't forget to tag me on all social media. I am at Gourdgeous Knits, and use hashtag Gourdgeous Knits Pumpkins, so I can see all your lovely pumpkins. All right. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy your fall. Thanks. Bye.